Don, thank you so much for the inspiration. And I can't agree more. It is your choice whether to be the leader of this change or to be the follower. I continue today's discussion on economic sustainers with a topic which is very, very close to my heart. Because I believe in the power of communities, and I do believe in the power of this community, of the Webbit global community from all around the world, regardless of all the challenges that we faced during the past almost 2 years of COVID pandemic. We found great ways to interact, to be together. We found great ways to innovate ourselves and to reinvent ourselves during these almost 2 years. And we're finally here now with this, I would say, one of the biggest in the world hybrid events with over 100,000 of you. So our next panel is about connecting society for a better future. And I have the pleasure to introduce Michael Cogley, who is Associate Tech Editor at Insider, to moderate the panel. Michael, please present yourself and the panel. Thank you.
Hi there, and welcome to this fireside chat. My name is Michael Cogley. I'm the Associate Tech Editor of Insider in London, and I'll be your host. I'm delighted to be joined by Johan Weiberg, Chief Technology Officer at Vodafone. Johan oversees Vodafone's network and IT strategies, and prior to joining Vodafone in 2015, he held a series of high-profile roles at Swedish telco giant Ericsson. Johan, I'm delighted you could take the time to join us for this chat. Your industry has been through a thrilling period in recent years, from the rise and fall of Huawei to the emergence of Open RAN and 5G, not to mention the vast change in demands on telcos and domestic networks that's happened during the pandemic. Despite all that, if I may, I'd like to start maybe talking a little bit about yourself and your own path to becoming Chief Technology Officer at one of the biggest telcos in the world. Was that a path that you had envisaged for a very, very long time, or did it kind of, over time, you just ended up in that direction?
First of all, Michael, thank you very much for having me here, and I'm delighted to join this conversation. Well, when I was 15 years old, like 1978, so it's a long time ago, I got my first computer, and that changed my life, and I got hooked on technology and especially computers. So that went to university, got master in computer science, became software programmer, manager, and then I got into telecoms, etc. And then eventually I ended up at Vodafone, and it really excites me because Vodafone is one of the larger telcos in the world. I think we got about 300 million mobile customers, having about 27 million fixed broadband customers. We're actually the biggest fixed broadband operator now in Europe. We are known as being the mobile company, but actually we are very big on fixed now. And then we're going through a major change, right? We have been a telco, but we're on the journey to become a digital enabler for our customers, and with all that means. And that means then that we're going through an enormous transformation at Vodafone, from having being a company buying products from suppliers and putting up networks to becoming a leading tech and software company, developing things that differentiates us, provides added value, and getting things done at a lower cost, getting it done faster. And so it's an amazing journey, not always that easy. There's a lot of problems and challenges, but I have to say I do that. And I'm really grateful to live in technology in these days now with so many things going on. So it's super exciting, I have to say.
Yeah. Can I ask, just on the digital enabler point, I mean, what does that mean for a company? Is that kind of a changing in your mission? You're kind of moving away from, just being a network business to basically enabling people to use their phones and digital lives as best they can. And what are the big differences there?
I think during the pandemic, I was very proud of how fast as a company we could mobilize and still keep our networks running for our customers. We had between 50 to 70% traffic increase in just in a matter of weeks. and was just fighting to keep everything up. But we also realized that we have a lot of customers that aren't, maybe they are somewhat digitally enabled, but not enough, not mature enough. And especially if you look on small and medium enterprises, which I think, at least in Europe, stands for about 85% of all new jobs being created, that they have much, much more to develop on being digitally enabled. And it's a big mission where we actually can help quite a lot. And then overall, just making the society even more digitally enabled. I think overall the cloud and communication broadband is really changing the world, and it's making so many things happening. So yeah, it's exciting.
Interesting. And that point of, I suppose, that point of you being known as the mobile operator for so long, and now to hear you speak about the fixed networks becoming almost as predominant as that's quite a big identity shift for you guys, I presume, that, because you're right. I mean, colloquially, you're known as the mobile company, but is it going to take a few years before the wider public start to grasp just how big a part of your business fixed actually is?
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I mean, we are definitely going through that journey, and that changed from being. And also we see that having both fixed and mobile being really key, and especially also in the 5G context, where there's a lot about providing, of course, both 5G context, 5G networks in all of the country, but building mobile private networks for companies, and you're combining it with the high-speed connectivity and cables, providing 5G connectivity for specific areas, etc., and combining it. And then edge computing coming in conjunction with that to make sure that the computing can happen where it be. So, but yeah, it takes a couple of years to we started that journey. I would say the big journey started 2013. So we've been on this journey for a while, but it's today we cover more than 44 million households with gigabit connectivity in Europe. That's pretty big.
Yeah, definitely. And fixed arguably was probably the bigger priority during the pandemic, and when people started shifting to working from home. I mean, how difficult a challenge was that for you guys to kind of, I suppose, deal with those new stresses that were placed on higher traffic in the home place and what have you?
Yeah, so what we could see differences between countries. So generally speaking, we could typically see like a 50% increase in fixed traffic. And that was a pressure on the networks. And mainly we could handle it quite well in the access networks. I was reaching the customers in the last mile or two. If you then went over to the internet, we have what's called peering points with other operators or some of the big hyperscalers. And there we saw big traffic increases, and we needed to move capacity and add on capacity to certain, for instance, in the Zoom traffic and the Teams traffic grew enormously, and hence we need to make sure we had enough peering for where that traffic was going. But if we saw 50% on the fixed networks, we had in some countries like Italy, we had 70% increase in mobile traffic. And that was sometimes really hard to handle. We were sometimes running very close to the edge of the capacity of the network. And sometimes we were just running a few weeks ahead of the capacity need and how we were expanding capacity. And then we had some customers I remember one customer came on Friday and said, we need a call center set up by Monday. And that usually is a 3-month project. But yeah, when the Monday morning came, they had a call center. So we had some heroic people that worked really, really hard to help our customers to get things going. Yeah.
And can I ask, in those mobile use cases, I mean, is that in essence people working from home and hotspotting off their phone, or what is the typical use case of that causing that spike to mobile in certain areas?
Well, sometimes it can be that people then are locked up in areas where the fixed broadband connection isn't good enough, and actually it is so that the mobile broadband is working better than fixed. So that's typical cases. Sometimes can be that you have capacity at home for one person, but that you have the whole family being home, kids playing games, parents trying to work, and it's not enough capacity on that fixed broadband. It might be the speed isn't good enough to handle that. A lot of customers had Wi-Fi problems at home, so maybe it worked in a normal case, but when you had that many people at home, there are interference with neighbors and not working well enough, so people then were using their mobile. So there were many different use cases driving that traffic increase.
Yeah. Can we bring it back then to Vodafone as a business more generally? Can you talk me through the state of play with the network now, where you guys are, and what are the most important things you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, no, it's a large amount of things going on, as I said. I mean, we are really on a journey from having been only a telco to become a digital enabler, and also, I mean, providing connectivity is really our core business, but we're building things and helping customers with things around the core connectivity that we added value, added on products that helps them. And when it comes to digital enablement, it can be very simple things, can be more advanced products and services that creates flexibility. Everything from simple consumer offerings to mobile private networks with 5G and edge computing together with AWS can be quite advanced things. But just to call a few things out, and if I think about it from the perspective of the purpose as a company, so first of all, the first pillar we have in the purpose of the company is really about inclusion for all. It's really about rural connectivity, making sure that, and also closing the digital divide. So in Europe, about 30% of the population in Europe lives in rural areas, and many of them do not have good enough broadband connection or even voice connection. So that is a part, and that only to close, and that part only got more important as we were having the pandemic, right? In Africa, we are doing a super interesting project with an American company called AST SpaceMobile. It's the only satellite project where you actually can use your normal phone and it talks directly up to the satellite. And all other satellite systems we see have some special equipment on the ground. But what's special with this technology is it actually mimics exactly on how a mobile network is working. So you can take your normal phone and it talks directly up to the satellite. So in 2023, we hope to be able to cover part of Africa with this. If that works, we will have brilliant connectivity across Africa, which is not existing today. And if that works well, it will be brought to the rest of the world. And that will take away the problem with lack of connectivity. And I mean, as we all know, there are certain areas that no connectivity. That we will solve in that case. Yeah. The second piece is creating a digital society. And as I said, it's very much about ensuring there is a fixed and mobile network with high performing, high speeds, always available to high resilience, adding on things like edge computing for really low latency applications. Really important things with IoT. You see, IoT devices will be, I think, one of the biggest growth areas going forward because you get sensors and you're controlling robots or whatever. So I think that will explode in a digital society, I believe. And in that context, then making sure we bring small and medium enterprises with us, which typically have the biggest need for digital enablement. They typically are somewhat behind on that one. And the third context going on, if I take the planet dimension, which is the final pillar in our purpose. I mean, we had originally set the plan to be just using green energy by 2025, but we did achieve it already this year. So we're running our European networks on 100% renewables. Not yet there in Africa, but we will be there before 2025.
Interesting. Of all of those, can I pick you up on the satellite issue? I mean, satellite has been around for a while, and you mentioned about rural areas. I come from a rural area in Ireland and had struggled with the early iterations of satellite, which was extremely expensive and really poor quality. But evidently that has gone through massive iterations since and is getting much better to the point where it is going to become affordable and usable. I mean, for you, do you see satellite to be a massive part of Vodafone's future?
No, I don't. I see it very much as a complement. I think when we look on all, and there's a lot of money going into satellite systems right now, and of course we're then analyzing it. Is it a competition to our business or is it an add-on? But if you look on, you typically find that the most cost-effective and most high-performing solution is if there is a terrestrial land-based mobile network, or if there is a fiber or another cable network available on the ground. That is typically the most cost effective and provides a higher performance. But in certain areas where you don't have that in place on the ground, a satellite is a very, very good complement. That's why I mentioned Africa as an example, but you can also take on the sea when you're up in the air. And then also you have certain geographical areas also, as you say, even in the UK where I live, there are areas that are not fully covered today. So there are, I see it very much as a very, very good complement to land-based systems. Yeah. But I see that land-based systems will always be more competitive than a satellite-based system.
Yeah, interesting. The other thing you'd mentioned there was kind of IoT. What challenge does that provide for you guys in terms of, providing the bandwidth for it? I mean, what do you have to do to make sure that you're able to keep all these IoT devices running constantly?
Yeah. It's a business that's super fun. I really like, and today we have the world's largest IoT platform. We have more than 130 million devices running on the platform, and it's typically more things like cars, sensors, vaccine deliveries being monitored 24/7, the temperature in the box, etc. So it's typical things that are not as often video streams. I think the thing that would be more challenging is when you move to IoT devices or security cameras streaming video all the time. Then we may start having bandwidth problems on networks due to that. But I see IoT devices just going to be exploding in volume and usage. I think in supply chains, I think it's a brilliant usage for it. I think healthcare is another area where we're going to see it much more. And the cost has come down so much, and it's very easy, very, very easy to use. So I think that's a big growth area. So I have a huge hope for that, expectation for that going forward.
I suppose beyond that then, in the telco industry more generally, I mean, what are your big predictions for the sector over the next decade or so? I mean, what do you see really coming down the tracks that maybe we haven't gotten full sight of just yet?
Yeah, so I already mentioned IoT a couple of times. I won't say that again, but I think that is really, I think it really is a key enabler for many things. I believe that the introduction of 5G mobile private networks and edge computing will allow a new type of computing applications. I mean, today, you have a problem if the distance between where a person is trying to do something and where the computing is being done, if that's too far away, if that's you get the problem with lag and things aren't being responsive, etc. And that's why when I'm talking about edge computing, where you move computing closer to where the person is, we can actually solve that pretty nicely in a network. So for instance, in a country like Germany, you can put in 10 places edge computing, and you have maximum 3 millisecond latency between any individual and a compute resource. So 3 milliseconds is the going in both directions. So you can suddenly start to do a lot of really interesting applications, whether you're talking about machine control in factories or augmented reality, etc. You can start offloading, so the technology you build, whether there are glasses or other things, becomes less compute intense, less battery, memory, etc., because you're doing more computing in the network, and hence you can create new types of devices and new type of applications. I think that will be a big thing in the coming 10 years. I think on top of IoT, we are having something really interesting, which is about doing financial transactions between IoT devices. You're also using blockchain, which I think will find so many problems that you actually can solve with it that we have problems with today. And then we overall are creating our whole network as a platform being programmable by customers. And so you can, on top of that, build new applications for developers. And then I think also making it easy for partners to do business with us, making sure that it's easy to connect and integrate and take advantage of the capabilities that do exist in networks for application developers or companies that have developed new applications that want just to hang them on top of the network. So I think there are a lot of interesting potential stuff.
And you'd mentioned kind of blockchain transactions there. What role will Vodafone have in that, and telcos more generally have in managing those transactions? And how different is it to, I suppose, what the fintechs and the neobanks are doing now, where you're sending money instantly online as well?
Yeah, no, so I think one needs to be very clear. I mean, first of all, I don't think it's generally a telco thing. From my viewpoint, is we believe heavily in having software engineering expertise in Vodafone. We have already got 9,000 people being software engineers. We have announced a couple of weeks back that we are recruiting another 7,000 or reskilling. And it's both for how we run our own thing, our own operations, and we're insourcing things. But it also is about building new added value on top of it. That has nothing to do with being a telco. So if you take this case specific on blockchain, basically we have built a system where you can, if you have an electric vehicle and you drive it in and you want to fill it up, charge it, you can have the car paying for that electrical bill without having any person involved. And it's like a payment transaction that goes on. And we won't compete with banks. That's not where we are doing it. But we actually used our IoT platform to build on top of it payment transactions. Mm-hmm. We actually have a lot of interest in those type of applications, because then you can use blockchain and you can use IoT devices that are secure, so you know the identity, and then you can do secure transactions between the involved companies or people.
That's really interesting. The last thing I'd ask you, just in terms of, I suppose, the structure of the industry more generally, I mean, do you see the relationship between big tech and telcos staying the same as they are? I mean, it's very much hand in glove at the moment. Do you see that relationship changing through the years, or becoming more collaborative or more competitive or anything?
I mean, we have a great partnership today with many of the larger tech companies. We are mainly complementary, and we have learned a lot from them. So very grateful for things. On some things we see the world differently, but I think generally we are very much complementary, and that's how we go to the market. We don't intend to compete with the tech companies, but rather how we work together.
Fantastic. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Johan. Thank you so much for taking the time. And for those of you viewing, I hope you found the chat as engaging as I did. All the best.
Thank you, Michael. Great to see you.
You too.